Hello friends, family, fans, readers, everyone that likes to watch my videos. Hello, it's July and just want to give you an update on the latest happenings and talk a little bit this time about being productive as a writer, and give a shout out to one of my favorite products, which is called Scrivener. But for starters, just to give you an update, what's going on with me as a writer. And I've been working on Airstorm, which is the sequel to Airborne. Airborne is still getting some great reviews. Just recently had a nice review on Instagram from a book logger, I guess you say, or vlogger, or Instagrammer. Anyway, she said it was gripping and sensual. Interesting. First time I've ever had Airborne called sensual by someone, but it is a romance story as well. Not predominantly, but there is a nice romance thread running through the book, so I can see where she came up with that conclusion. So thank you. I really appreciate that soundbite from your book review. But I did want to talk about being productive as a writer. And if you follow my Twitter feed or my Instagram or even on Facebook, you know that I focus a lot on being productive and being focused. And when Airborne was written, I was working a full-time job. I have family, I have friends I spend time with, and I do volunteer work as well, local community work. And in the midst of all of those activities, I still managed to write a full-length novel. And not only that, but first pass editing, work with an editor on getting revisions in, selecting the cover art, and then the whole process of formatting the book and making sure that the font is good and making sure the pages lay out correctly and the chapters lay out correctly and that the additional content is in there, and doing a proof copy like I've talked about on a previous video. Just making sure all of it was good to go, high quality work. And I did that while I was working a full-time job. And that full-time job was not just 40 hours a week. Sometimes it was 50, sometimes even 60, depending upon what was going on at the time. So I am proof that you can do it too. If you want to write a novel and you got it in you, you can do it. And I'll explain my little secret. I've written about this before, and I've talked with people before about this process. But basically, it requires you to be focused on what you really want to accomplish. Now, I will say that Airborne took over 3 years for me to write, format, and get it into print. But I did it. I accomplished it. And the way I did that is I found my areas of focus. Now, a long time ago, I went through a management course that's based on the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey. I'm sure you've heard of the book, you've probably read it yourself, but I went through a management training course based upon that publication. And I gotta say, it changed my life in how I thought about productivity and getting things done, getting things accomplished. And so one of the things that it focused on was 5 areas in which to focus your life. And if you start focusing on anything more than 5 areas, then some of those areas start to suffer. And so part of the exercise that I went through in that course was to have a whole bunch of index cards, wrote down on those cards things that were important to me. And trust me, I had like 20 index cards by the time I was done writing everything out. And we each had partners at the table, and my partner had those 20 cards, and she read off one at a time each card with the goal of me eliminating those cards until I only had 5. And guess what those 5 cards were? Number 1, faith. 2, family. 3, friends. 4, fitness. You see a similarity here going on? 4 F's right there. And the 5th one was a little bit tough for me. I struggled with identifying that 5th item because it was going to sit within the 5 areas of focus, and it was going to be more important than all the other things in my life that I had an interest in. Did you notice that finances was not in there? Because, finances are an end to a means. In other words, I don't focus on becoming rich. I focus on other things that are more important in my life. But that 5th item, what it boiled down to was writing. I like telling stories. I like writing stories, doing creative writing. And I will admit that the story writing took a little bit of a back burner when I got involved with music for many years. But as of the last 15 years or so, music has taken the back burner and my creative writing has risen to the fore. Now, I can argue that music was creative writing as well, because I was writing music and writing songs. But the story writing, again, has taken the most important level of that. So there were my 5 things: faith, family, friends, fitness, and writing. Those were my 5 areas of focus. Now, that being said, what's the next thing that's important to do if you want to find time to focus on your goal, focus on being a writer specifically, because that's what this video is about? Learn to live within your area of influence instead of your circle of concern. In the book by Stephen Covey, he talks about 2 circles, a circle of concern and a circle of influence. And most people spend their time, believe it or not, in what's called their circle of concern. Those are things that they're concerned about. They talk about it. They watch on TV. They maybe read about these things, or they have these discussions about these things. But these are things that they have absolutely no control over whatsoever. And I'll give you an example. Now, I'm really sorry if I'm going to touch on some toes out there, especially if you're a big sports fan. Now, I'm a sports fan too. I was a serious sports fan on football and Formula One racing and IndyCar racing. And I would watch maybe a game a week, but I was watching all of the Formula One races and some of the IndyCar races. And I was having some difficulty getting the writing done that I needed to get done. So I sat down and I evaluated the amount of time I was spending doing those things. Now, yes, they're fun and they're recreational, and I'm not saying throw away all your recreation, because you got to have some level of balance. But I figured out that by watching these programs, recording the programs, and then spending the amount of time talking about these things with people at work, friends, associates, and listening to things about these sporting events, I discovered over 140 hours a year that I could spend being focused on something that allows me to accomplish something instead of just being concerned about it. I have no control over the Seattle Seahawks. I have no control over the Formula One races and who's going to win. But I do have control over what I can do with my time. So I found over 140 hours a year of time that I could spend being productive because I quit doing those other things. Did I miss them? Yeah, for a little bit. But you know what? Probably for a month. After that, I didn't care anymore. In fact, I'll admit, I'll watch the Super Bowl and maybe I'll watch the Formula One in Monte Carlo. But other than that, I just don't care anymore. It doesn't carry any importance with me or for me. Now again, don't get me wrong, if you need those things for your recreation to help you sharpen the saw, so to speak, stick with it. Because having a balance is important. And there are other things I do for my balance. I like to hike, so I go hiking, and there's my fitness and my recreation. And of course, I still spend time with friends and family and focus on volunteer work as well. So spend your time in your circle of influence and not so much time in your circle of concern. So just a word there for you on how you can find some time so that you can focus on your writing, focus on getting your goals met, getting those in front of you. Now, that being said, I also utilize some tools that help me to be productive. One of those tools is called Scrivener, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about Scrivener here at the end of the video. But for right now, it's an application that allows me to write. It runs on my iPad, it runs on my Mac, it runs on my Windows device. I can use it everywhere. It saves files out into the cloud, so it allows me to be very efficient in my writing process. But another tool that I use, not necessarily is a software tool, but it's a process. And the process is when I map out a story, I create the background for that story. I create the characters and their backgrounds. I create an encyclopedia on places and things that I'm going to utilize within that story. And I also create a full outline of the story. I plot it out, each chapter. And the way I do that, I'm going to save for a future video. But what that process allows me to do is that when I do step away from writing for a while, I will be able to pick myself back up and be productive again pretty quickly because I have the entire storyline all mapped out. So for me to sit down and start writing means I take a brief look at my outline, I maybe read over the last scene that I wrote, and then just dive back in. And that allows me to get started rather than rereading maybe the last couple chapters and wrapping my head around, okay, where am I going with this story? So there are ways that you can utilize these same types of processes and tools for becoming productive and getting your story written, getting your book written. So if I can do it, and I definitely have done it, you can do it too. It's easy. You just got to set your mind on it and get down and do it. Next month on my video, I'm going to go into this process aspects of it a little bit more. I'm going to talk about some of the background information and some of the outlining process that I do and utilize. And I'll probably, I don't know if I'll base that upon the Airstorm and airborne environments, but Zegan's Adventures I did that with as well. So I'll talk a little bit about that process and use Zegan's Adventures as an example. So one of the tools that I mentioned is Scrivener. Scrivener is a software application that runs on iPads, Windows, Mac, and it's a tool that I've been using for many years. And let me show you my my platform here. Here's my iPad and pretty thin. This is actually a first generation iPad. I added a keyboard, Logitech keyboard, as you can see here. There's my logo for the book. So having the ability to use Scrivener on this device affords me the ability to write just about anywhere. So I'm going to show you the Scrivener app. If you can see that okay. I know there's a lot of reflection going on. But basically those are all the projects that I have going on in Scrivener. Probably here in a future video I might figure out how to show my iPad screen on the video so that you can see what I'm doing on the device. But the nice thing I like about Scrivener is it allows me to format everything into chapters. I can format background information into a section and have that available to me on the screen at the same time that I'm writing, and just break the different areas out. The other thing that I like about Scrivener, which is really cool, is it supports formatting into ebook format and PDF. So my beta readers really appreciate that, because as I complete a chapter, I basically compile it down to a PDF document and then send it out to my beta readers, and makes it easy for them to digest the story and get feedback to me as well. And a lot of the formatting capabilities are built into Scrivener so that I can do the page numbering, the formatting of the chapter headers for each chapter, and also allows embedding of pictures and graphics as well. If you see my book Undiscovered, each short story starts with a graphic as a kind of an intro into each short story. So there's my pitch for this month for Scrivener. You'll see the link down here for the site if you decide you want to go and check it out. Tell them I sent you. I really appreciate it. But check it out. It's worth looking into. I know a lot of people use Google Docs online because that's convenient, but if you don't have an internet connection, it's a little tough to continue working. That's what I like about Scrivener. If I'm on an airplane and I've got my Wi-Fi turned off, I can still write. So it's a nice, handy tool. And just in conjunction with that, for storing a lot of my research, I use Microsoft's OneNote. I used to be a big Evernote advocate, but not anymore. Microsoft has finally matured OneNote to a point where I actually can use it to the extent that I need to use it for my research and just storage of information in preparation for writing a story. So anyway, that's it for now. Thank you for watching the videos. Be sure to check out my website, timothytrimble.com. You can find me on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. Will there be some outtakes after this video? Yeah, probably. Thank you for watching. Have a good one. So let's try that again. For a lot of people that might be politics as well. You might have a little bit of an influence there, but on the world scheme of things, maybe not so much. Ways that you can utilize these same let's try that again.